Okay, and we are live. It is 10 o'clock on, what is the date today? It's a good question.
8th.
The 8th of November. I'm with Sleeping Warrior. Anthony Riley is with me today. And we are going to be talking about the issues with education, specifically partisan issues with education.
Yes.
Within the education system. This is going to be the nitty-gritty of the gatekeeping, I suppose, that's been going on in the education system. It looks like you've slowed down enough, Anthony, to go over the small print. I don't even know how to start this sentence. So on that note, I'm going to hand it over to you and let you take it away.
Okay, so for those of you that don't know, I'm quite new to Roxanne's channel. It's been like 3 weeks maybe. I came towards the tour right at the end, and I didn't realize it was already long into it. I didn't know how long it took. I was a bit green when I met her on Saturday because I didn't know all the ins and outs. I knew something was happening. I knew it had been on for a while. Didn't know the ins and outs of it, but I realized that I was late to the table, as it were. For those of you that met me on Saturday, I gave a quick presentation where I told folk that I was researching for a master's degree. And I was going to do it primarily on flat earth because I wanted to try and find a way to get flat earth mentioned in the mainstream education system. And I said on Saturday night that I was some way through the research, and there's many different angles of research that when you partake in a legal paper, you got to look at loads of different angles. You got to look at it from different perspectives to find what law, if any, is the most applicable, and then think about what that angle that you find, think about how that applies to what you're presented with. And it wasn't easy because in the context that I'm looking at the teachers that are teaching the heliocentric model within the national curriculum. I'm looking at the head teachers that are responsible for making sure that the teachers are competent. I'm looking at the board of governors for the idea that they're going to be governing the head teacher and the other associated staff. And I'm looking at the local education authority because they've got a duty to do stuff. I didn't know what the duties were, but I was researching it because I believe that really my view is that heliocentricity shouldn't be taught in secondary schools or primary schools because it's taught as fact, not necessarily as the model that it clearly is. It's passed off as though it's true. It's passed off as though we should just accept it without question because everybody's always, according to Brian Cox, he can't think of a single person in the whole of history that thought that the Earth might not be a sphere. Well, there's loads, but I was researching it and I hadn't come across a specific duty for anybody, teachers or otherwise, to teach the truth. And that's what I said on Saturday night. And that's still the same. That's not changed. I realized that there are enough people that are teaching and probably are doing it with the best of intentions because that's basically what they got taught themselves. And I've gone away since Saturday night and I've carried on with the different angles that I'm looking at from different perspectives. And I have found some new piece of legislation, or I say new piece of legislation. It's an old piece of legislation, but it's relevant to us within Flat Earth because I can pretty much guarantee that nobody in Flat Earth knows about this education, this legislation. And now, say again, yeah, until today.
Until today.
So the idea is to tell you guys about it, because if we know that this legislation is in place, what we can do with the legislation becomes creative in that we can think of explanations, or we can think of applications rather, where this legislation will benefit Flat Earth generally, and more accurately to do with what's being taught in schools. Now, it's not straightforward, and it's going to take a little bit of dry information. There is one case that I'm going to show you guys, and I'm going to talk through it. And I'll try and do it as best I can, so it's not boring, but it may get boring. But stick with it because it's really straightforward when we get through the minutiae of it. But we all benefit from this, and nobody in Flat Earth, as far as I'm aware, realizes that this law is there. So my input to it is to find this piece of legislation and then tell everybody about it and then apply it. because we can use this to our benefit, and no longer should it be the case that we are kind of ignored by science or by the establishments.
Correct.
I think that once we realize that we can use this, how we use it is important. And I think that knowing that we've got the ability in law to do something rather than believing or being ignorant to the law where we do nothing is far more advantageous to us. So really, it's the case of giving people an update as to what was said on Saturday night. It's to ask people for creative ideas on how to use this new piece of or this new piece of information that we're about to get. And basically, it's just to tell people, hey, we don't have to be silenced by the establishment because the law's there to help us. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to screen share. And then if you wouldn't mind presenting it, I'll go back to the beginning.
No worries.
And then start there. So let me know when we're good.
I'm just making sure everyone else can see what I can see. Sorry, I'm a little bit of a newbie at stuff like this. Can everyone in that, because I can see it on my playback screen. So yeah,
you need to make sure you need to make sure it's presented to everyone.
Yeah, I'm looking now and it's presented to everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys in chat can't see this row of books, you need to shout Roxanne in chat and let her see that she can't see it. But if as long as you can see this row of books, we're good. So obviously, I'll start assuming that we can see it. I last did my undergrad degree I started it in 1999 and I finished it 3-4 years later. I think I did a gap year in the middle. So 99, 2000, 2001, 2, 3. I think I finished it in 2003 or 4 because I did a gap year. Anyway, when I did my legal research in my undergrad, this is how we did it. There was numerous books on numerous shelves. And you had to know where to look and you had to know how to look. And it looks straightforward there because you just say, oh, yeah, that's okay. Go to the relevant year and find the piece of legislation that you want. But if you don't know where the legislation is and if it even exists at all, that's time consuming and it takes forever. So what I was doing back then was manual. It wasn't electronic. And obviously the internet's changed over time. And I've got a little bit behind the time in terms of what the situation is now. So this is the current version of what I've just showed you. You don't have to go to the library anymore. All you've got to do is look online. Now, this is done through LexisNexis. The membership for this is extremely expensive, and the value for money of this is basically it's not good value for money if you only use it the once. But if all the students are using it, then it's great value for money. A lot of legal practices don't even subscribe to it because they literally can't afford it. But as you can see, the Halsbury's Laws of England are where the Bible of the legislation is enshrined. This is where you find it all. So if I wanted to find any particular law in a particular area, this is one way of researching it. You can browse it or you can search for it specifically. Now, obviously, I don't have a specific search. I need the general search browsing. So I'm going to be looking for education. So when I open up the bit under education, I can see that it's split into subcategories. And if I go into the curriculum assessment and external qualifications subcategory, I can see that there's the one that says curriculum. And then in England, it tells you that this paragraph is where the duty in law comes from to secure implementation of the national curriculum for England. So that's the bit that says that you've got to do the national curriculum. Now, I didn't click into that because it's self-explanatory. You've got to do it, right? But the next page that I looked at was another couple of subheadings. So this subheading's the curriculum in England. And then you've got one, the curriculum in Wales, not relevant for what I want. Then you got sex education, not relevant for what I want. But then I noticed this one that was politics. And I didn't think initially that there was a political aspect to education, depending on how you define politics. So I looked at paragraphs 908 and 909, and there's only 2 of them. And it dawned on me that this is the jackpot from Flat Earth's point of view. And what I'm going to do now is just talk about 908 and 909 in terms of activism, but also in terms of what is heliocentricity doing in the national curriculum. So we'll deal with 908 first, the political indoctrination. And all the political indoctrination point is, it says that head teachers, governing bodies and the local authority must stop the pursuit of partisan political activities by any of the pupils. That makes sense. But it also says that the head teacher, etc., must stop the promotion of partisan political views in the teaching of any subject in the school. So you can argue, you've got to kind of think about this from two angles. The first angle would be whether or not flat Earth could be considered partisan political, but also think about the possibility, and in my case, the probability that heliocentricity is partisan political, because partisan political is a word, a phrase that, what on earth does it mean? Now, I'll come to a case in a minute which shows us and tells us what partisan political means in the context of law. You can get a dictionary out, you can go and look it on the internet, but what matters is what the law states that partisan political is. It's no good going to dictionary definitions when we've actually got a case that deals with partisan political views. So we'll come to that in a minute. But the key point is to notice that if something is partisan political, the teacher must forbid the promotion of partisan political views in the teaching of any subject in the school. So it's not just showing it; it's the promotion of. So you can show stuff, but you can't promote it. So that's what's banned, right? And the head teacher must stop it. And I'm going to argue that the head teacher must stop it within the context of heliocentricity. And I'll come back to why that is in a while. I'll now deal with the next paragraph, which would be 909. The duty to secure balanced treatment of political issues. So again, you've got the same three people. You've got the local authority, the governing body, and the head teacher. These must take reasonable steps as are reasonably practicable to secure that where political issues, be it flat earth or heliocentricity, are brought to the attention of pupils whilst they're in attendance at school, they're offered the balanced presentation of opposing views. So on the one hand, the head teacher must ban promotion of partisan political stuff. But on the other hand, he also has to provide a balanced presentation of an opposing view. Now, this then comes back to the definition of partisan political, because I'm going to argue that heliocentricity is partisan political. But obviously the ballers will argue that, well, flat earth is clearly partisan political. You're all a bunch of morons. Well, let's just see how moronic the heliocentric position is. And I'm going to do that by way of the footnote that we see at the bottom. It's paragraph 9, or footnote number 9. So when we open up footnote number 9, it gives the legal authority for the requirement that there's a balanced presentation of opposing views. It's Education Act section 407, subsection 1. And what it says is, a balanced approach does not involve equality. Balanced means nothing more than fair and dispassionate. And then there's a case. And in this case, this is where we get the definition of partisan political from. So when we look into this case, and it's a 2007 and 2008 case, this is to do with Al Gore's global warming video. It was called The Inconvenient Truth. If you cast your mind back a few years, some of us might actually remember it. Obviously, Al Gore wrote this. It was critically acclaimed, but it won a couple of awards for being really impact worthy. It struck chords with people, and it was contentious at the time. And I do remember a lot of the people talking about it, but it didn't relate to me at the time. Wasn't in flat earth at the time, but it's relevant now, because looking back on this from a flat earth perspective, this is going to deal with specifically the meaning of the word partisan, and the meaning of the duty of the local education authority to stop the promotion of partisan political views, and also how to offer a balanced presentation of opposing views when political issues are brought to the attentions of pupils. And obviously I'm just reading that from the catchword and digest at the top. Now, basically, it was accepted that Al Gore's political film was partisan political, in that it argued global warming was caused by man, and we had to do stuff to stop it. Inevitably, there was the promotion of partisan political views, irrespective of the publication of guidance, since the breach of the statute would be irremediable, irreversible, if they just promoted this partisan political view. So the issue was whether or not promoting it or playing it were the same thing. Was playing it promotion, or was it just playing it? It depends on what happens, because it's not clear cut. But the issue of law that arose relating to the construction of sections 406 and 407, which was to do with the indoctrination and to do with whether or not a balanced discussion or whatever was to result, it describes what the meaning of partisan and the meaning and the ambit of the duty of the local education authority to stop the promotion of such views, and the meaning of to offer the balanced presentation of opposing views. I know I've just said that, but it's still highlighted here. So we're now going to go through what the judge said. Now, what I wanted to do in this instance is to think about the consequences from the perspective that heliocentricity could be classed as partisan, according to this judge's decision. But not only heliocentricity being partisan, whether or not where flat Earth fits into this. So we'll start with number one. There's three points that the judge made. So 1, 2, and 3. And the first one is to do with the definition of partisan politics. And the word partisan has to be construed as meaning one-sided. So obviously heliocentricity is pretty much one-sided. It's treated as fact. We're all taught that sun's 93 million miles away. And that's pretty much as far as the national curriculum goes. End of sentence, really. If it means one-sided in court, then it's probably going to be partisan, regardless of what dictionaries definitions say. This judge has said that it means one-sided. And we all know that heliocentricity is basically described as one-sided in schools, because there is no alternative as far as I'm aware. They may mention geocentricity. I've seen that mentioned a little bit, but certainly not that there's alternative views to the Earth potentially being concave, hollow, or indeed flat. Where does that fit into it? More research is needed to make the position concrete, but nonetheless, it's quite obvious that heliocentricity is the only one that's really taught. So, number one, it says a superficial treatment of the subject matter, typified by portraying factual or philosophical premises, gravity, as being self-evident or trite with insufficient explanation or justification, and without any indication that they might be subject of legitimate controversy. Well, we're all quite well versed on whether gravity is real or not, whether the curvature is real or not, whether all the elements to the Earth and the things that we don't consider to be credible, axial rotation, they are pushed as self-evident. They are not given any indication that they might be subject of legitimate controversy. Because I don't ever remember having any conversations about anybody else questioning the shape of the Earth. And Brian Cox is on the telly telling kids that he doesn't know anybody in the whole history of mankind that thought the Earth might be flat. Well, when you're saying things like that to children, that's not being entirely transparent, is it? Because all of the previous, a lot of the previous people, the Babylonians and whatnot, they all thought the Earth was flat. There's enough demonstration and illustration in hieroglyphic type stuff that different tribes of the world did think that the Earth was flat, domed with stars and stuff on the outside or on the inside or whatever. So it's not true what Brian Cox says. People did think that the Earth might be flat at some point, but that seems to have changed quite recently, and now it's obviously, according to science, it's called a sphere. But again, they don't tell us that there's the potential that there might be the subject of legitimate controversy with heliocentricity. Moving further on, it says the misleading use of scientific data. Well, how much scientific data do we get taught? And is it being misleading to say that the sun and the moon are, they look the same size in the sky, but one's 400 times further away and it's 400 times bigger? Is that true? Or is it misleading? Because we all see the sun the same size. And I mean, there's loads to talk into this in terms of that statement. You can go everywhere with it. Misrepresentations and half-truths and one-sidedness. Well, one-sidedness, again, is there, and that's heliocentricity all over. Point 2, the deployment of material in such a way as to prevent pupils meaningfully testing the veracity of the material and forming an independent understanding as to how reliable it was. Well, think about things from NASA, pictures from space. How reliable is that? Well, we all laugh at that. But do children laugh at it, or do they get told that it might not be as reliable as it seems when you've got Matt Simmons telling people, well, it has to be, because we're all taught these things as just true. These are pictures from space, they're real, they're from NASA, and nobody challenges or is able to challenge the veracity of that material according to this. And again, it looks like you could argue that the heliocentric argument could indeed be defined as partisan. We've got two more. The exaltation of protagonists. So we've got the likes of Neil deGrasse Tyson, Cox, all the people that push the spherical Earth, and their motives, money, coupled with the demonization of opponents, that would be us, and our motives, Well, again, that's heliocentricity, right? Because the exaltation of protagonists. Think about these people, these protagonists on their side, these astrophysicists. They're all seen as being fantastic people, right? We look up to them, and if you look back at that mic drop video of Neil deGrasse Tyson, all I'll say to you guys is just look at the shoes he's wearing on that day. They're the scruffiest piece of dog shit I've ever seen. Yeah. So it's like, but he's put in this position of elevation, and I'll say exaltation for the purposes of this decision by the judge, and he's definitely a protagonist. So it's like, what is his motive? Is his motive to hide his wage? Presumably. Could he have other motives? Maybe. But do they demonize the opponents? Well, think to the likes of Barack Obama. We've not got time for a debate with the Flat Earth Society, right? That's ridicule and scorn, but is it demonization? Probably. I mean, I'm sure you could all think of like examples where people have mocked flat Earth. I mean, there's loads of them out there. The mic drop from Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Can we call it discrimination?
Yeah, it's ridicule. It's but they do it. So I mean, so far we've got the first three, and heliocentricity is bang for rights at this point. And then the final one, number 4, says the derivation of the moral expedient from assumed consequences requiring the viewer to adopt a particular view and course of action in order to do the right as opposed to do the wrong. Well, I mean, the ridicule that's attached to thinking that the Earth was flat is prominent, right? And that could be argued to be wrong, and if you're going to be flat Earth and whatnot, because you're laughed at. So it's kind of giving a push towards a moral position based on what is the right thing and the wrong thing, and it's definitely not considered to be the right thing to be flat Earth in school. But again, number 4 seems to be satisfied. On that definition that I've just gone through, heliocentricity would be deemed as being partisan. And if it is, every head teacher in school should be stopping it, because that's what the first obligation said. If it's partisan, it shouldn't be promoted. It's promoted everywhere. Neil deGrasse, Brian Cox, everything to do with NASA. I mean, really, it does satisfy the definition. I mean, what do you think, Rox? Do you think that this is kind of partisan heliocentricity, or do you think that it's borderline, or do you think you need to do a bit more work?
I think it's fully fledged partisan, because it's not a balanced view. It's not. There's no. If, like I said to you before, if they were going to try and bring anything into the mix, I think as their defense, they might say, okay, well, look, on one hand, we're giving them the heliocentric model, but on the other hand, we give them religious education. So we kind of feel that that's balanced. And I only say that because there's days that my daughter comes back and she says, Mum, today was a madness. Science in the morning, you know, well, actually, this isn't now because she's not taking religious studies for her GCSE, but when she was in her previous year, there'd be in one day, she's getting taught 2 models. She's getting taught the heliocentric model, but then in religious studies, they're not advocating for that at all. So I feel that the school might use that as its like kind of last ditched attempt to say, no, we do kind of give some kind of balance. I feel that they're going to try and get out of the partisan side of it by saying that because there's, you know, religious education consists of all of the religions that are, you know, internationally there. And they do kind of touch on all of them and give them a synopsis on everything. But I still don't think it would if we took it to, maybe these are the wrong choices where, but I don't feel that would stand up in court, because if you look like on an academic year, and then on top of that, if you look at all the propaganda that's outside of school, it's completely partisan the way it's presented to the students throughout the academic year, because it's not just pumped out through one subject. It's pumped out through multiple subjects, through geography, you know, that's just to name one. And it's not just in science, it's in geography, and, you know, they can adapt it into English by storytelling of, you know, previous stories that have been written in history that involve the heliocentric model as well. You only have to look at Christopher Columbus and stuff like that they use. So I feel like I'm on the side of, you know, the heliocentric is taught in a partisan way.
I agree. The question becomes, and we'll deal with this in the next paragraph, what is allowed with partisan? Is the promotion of partisan more important or less important than the fact that it's been played at all? And that's dealt with this paragraph number 2. So the second point that the judge said was the mere distribution by the Secretary of State to schools, because they have all the schools have got a list of authorized textbooks and material that are allowed to be played. Just let me let the dog out 1 sec.
Yep, no worries. While he's doing that, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in to us this evening. If you've got anything that you want to put your 2 cents worth into anything that we're saying, please. Any constructive input at this stage is really useful.
Yeah, and if you want to ask any specific questions, put them in caps and make sure that you put Roxanne's name on it so she can see it, and then just copy and paste it into Summit if you can, so that we can ask it later. So the material, the material for the Secretary of State, right? He's got to authorize all the material, be it books, videos, CDs, DVDs, whatever. And this is the next part that it deals with. It says, the mere distribution by the Secretary of State to schools to facilitate their showing of the film and accompanied by guidance is not per se, on the face of it, or irremediably a promotion of the partisan political views. The statute could not possibly mean that Section 406 was breached, which is the indoctrination bit that they must stop. Whenever a partisan political film was shown to pupils in school time. So playing the video in itself is not going to be enough. This is the important bit. What was forbidden by the statute was political indoctrination. So a teacher who, in the course of a school day and as part of the syllabus, presented to his pupils with the appropriate setting and with proper tuition and debate, that's the key bit, proper tuition and debate, a film or document, in this case a topic, which itself promoted in a partisan way some political view, the earth might not be a sphere, could not possibly be the mischief against which the statute was intended. So basically what that's saying is it's not going to be the teachers that are going to be responsible. Now, the Act itself didn't say teachers anyway. It said head teachers, Board of Governors, and LEAs, local education authorities. But what is forbidden by the statute was political indoctrination. So it's not just playing it, heliocentricity, it's promoting it as true. And we all know that they do that. I'm pretty certain that it is promoted as true, particularly when you've got the likes of Brian Cox, Neil deGrasse Tyson pushing this nonsense as though it's ridiculous to be anything else. So the indoctrination part of it really is there. I mean, I'm pretty comfortable saying that the kids are indoctrinated.
After that, they kind of rely on the "we are the majority" mindset after that.
Yeah,
and hope that no one will peel out of that for fear of social exclusion.
And the other part of it is once you've had your GCSEs, once you've been taught about this at whatever age, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, the solar system, it's never really challenged again until some of you go to do astrology or maybe physics at A level. By that point, there's been 4, 5, 6, 7 years where nobody's challenged it. Everybody goes in there remembering that sun's 93 million miles away, and it's just accepted, and nobody would ever challenge it because everybody else has got the same answer. It's like everyone knows it's 93 million miles away. So what are you likely to challenge it when everybody's thinking the same thing at the A levels? Probably not. I never challenged it, and I believed it were a ball for years. I had no reason to question it because I wasn't told that maybe it's not true. Maybe it's the best guess that we've got at the minute, but there are alternative views. I didn't have any debate in school about whether or not the earth was a sphere. It was never even questioned. It was just accepted to be.
It was a given for us all.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain that everybody was in the same position. It was, there's the sun, 93 million miles away. If you remember that number, you'll be fine. It's etched on my brain like a cattle prod. Anyway, moving on to the final point that the judge made, the third point that the judge said, in order to comply with the requirements of 406 and 407, 406 being the indoctrination and how it should be stopped, 407 being the fair reflection of balanced argumentation or discussion, the Secretary of State, when actively distributing films or material or whatever, has to make it clear that some or all of the matters contained therein were not supported or promoted by him, and there was a view to the contrary. Well, I was never told in school that there was any alternative views, right? And if there was an alternative view, I definitely didn't get told that when we were being taught about the solar system, that it might be, there may be views to the contrary. I wasn't told it. So not only was I not told it, that there was an opposing view, I wasn't told the disclaimer, because I would have asked questions, and we all would have done. Well, what's the alternative view, sir? How do they know this? And why did people think that? That didn't happen for me. And I'm pretty certain it didn't happen for anybody else that's beyond a certain age in chat either, because it was basically black and white. The heliocentric model is what we live in. This is the ball that you live on, and this is where you live on that ball. And it's finite. Resources are finite. Land is finite. Once it's gone, it's gone. That's what I was taught. So he's got to give this disclaimer, and that there may be a view to the contrary. I did not get that. Furthermore, any guidance note had to be incorporated into the pack. It was not sufficient simply to have the facility to cross-refer to it on an educational website. Moreover, in the guidance note, any serious apparent errors in the film has to be identified. What, maybe that gravity doesn't exist by science, you can't prove it, or maybe that you can't prove any curvature or axial rotation, or how a gas pressure can exist next to a vacuum. These are all issues that, if you think about it, that's the reason why Nathan puts them as the housekeeping, because these are all what I would describe as serious apparent errors, because these are things that we have in housekeeping because they're seriously apparent errors. And these are not identified. Now, it might be the case that they didn't know. They didn't realize that. I wouldn't expect most teachers to have thought about it. It's probably done in innocence. However, it says not only so as to encourage informed discussion, but also so that it should not appear that the Secretary of State was promoting partisan views by giving his imprimatur to it. Promoting partisan views is the point. They should be distancing themselves, saying the heliocentric view may not be the only answer. There may be other alternative ones, and then that would then stimulate the conversation by the kids. Well, what else might it be, sir? And I would remember doing that, and that didn't happen for me. So, nevertheless, there was no need for comment on every single aspect of the film in the guidance, heliocentricity in this case. In this particular case, the guidance as at the date of the application for judicial review was launched had been inadequate in the light of the changes made to the guidance note, which the defendant had agreed to make and had already made. No order would be made as to relief. I mean, a lot of that now is kind of irrelevant in terms of like the application for us. Just to say that the definition of partisan is by number one, and that's heliocentricity all over. Is it promoted by schools? Well, yeah, I would argue it is promoted by schools, because the people, the actors that are on the stage, like Neil deGrasse, etc., they do promote it on behalf of the school. And I'm pretty certain that the teachers would support it when they do things like that. And then obviously the third part is to do with what the Secretary of State should be doing where the issues are contentious. And to be fair to the Secretary of State, he may not even realize that the Earth might not be a sphere. He probably does, but he might not. But nonetheless, in law, it states that you've got to point out some of these issues that are seriously apparent errors, like why we can't detect curvature anywhere, why no science can prove gravity. The definition of gravity is not even agreed upon. Is it Einsteinian gravity or is it Newtonian gravity? According to science, Newtonian principles have been superseded by Einsteinian. But then you've got the bending of space-time for the definition of gravity. And whatever that means, who knows? But that's the position. There are serious errors in the heliocentric model that we really should have been told by when they're teaching the solar system. But no one ever challenges it because it's just accepted that that's the way it is. So the reason why I'm going through this is because it's going to form part of my paper, but it's also because if you realize that heliocentricity is basically partisan, the head teacher has a legal responsibility to ensure that it should be stopped in the schools.
Right.
Because partisan teaching or promotion of partisan teaching is forbidden. So the question that I want you guys to think about is heliocentricity partisan by what we've just been through? And if you need to re-listen to it, do so. But is it being promoted as the truth? And I would say it is both partisan and being promoted by the truth, therefore should be stopped by the head teacher because it's illegal. And that's my view. I don't think that the heliocentric model, the space model that we're taught, shouldn't be taught in schools without being telling people that there may be alternative views and to stimulate that conversation. And we all know that that doesn't really happen in school. So I think that the application of the heliocentric model within the national curriculum falls foul of what this law states because it is partisan, it does get promoted, and there's no counter, there's no discussion, there's no balanced representation of views. Now, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Roxanne, but for me, that's massive. What do you think?
Massive's an understatement.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned.
It's massive. It really does apply to the heliocentric part of the national curriculum. Now, I'm going to move on to the next part, because the second part of it is basically it's to do with the activism itself. Now, Roxanne's tour recently in the tour bus, in the tour mobile home, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
That was overall a massive slog, a test of endurance. There must have been moments where they all thought, stuff this, it's not worth it. It's too much. The vehicle broke down a couple of times because it was a bit older than what perhaps it should have been, or whatever. But if it can go wrong, it usually does go wrong. And I'm sure that the guys that did it had moments where they were bleak, where they were looking out in the rain and they just thought, stuff it, I want to get a bottle of vodka and go home. Because it would have been murder when it wasn't going good. And initially they'd have been riding that wave, but once they realized that they were only 10% of the way through, that's a massive commitment. And for me personally, I've got to tip my hat off to them and think, wow, because it is impressive that they've gone out and done that, because it is impressive. But I wonder whether if they could do it again, would they consider it to be an efficient use of time, given how many people that they got to? Sure, it was a lot of people, but was it efficient? If you could do that time again, would you have done it different? And I'm pretty certain that they would have done some things differently. And maybe they wouldn't have done it at all. Maybe they would, I don't know. But was it efficient? And is there a better way to do activism? And this is why I've approached Roxanne, because based on that knowledge of what we've just talked about, the second part of this law is the duty to secure a balanced treatment of political issues. So we've got this leaflet. In this, it says at the top that we could make a little leaflet. I hadn't realized that we could use the leaflet that they've already got, and that would work. Because basically what it states in the law is that the local education authority, plus the board of governors and the headmaster, head teacher, must take such steps that are reasonably practicable to secure that where flat earth is brought to the attention of pupils, whilst the pupils are in attendance at mainstream schools, the pupils are offered a balanced presentation of opposing views, which leads you to a conundrum, because can you imagine the scene where you turn up outside a school and you've got some kind of banner or some kind of whatever, and you start rallying the kids as they're coming out of school? You're going to get locked up because you're kind of harassing, intimidating the kids possibly, or whatever. It's just going to cause hassle, right? But this law states that if flat earth's brought to the attention of pupils whilst they're in attendance at a school, the pupils have got to be offered a balanced presentation of opposing views. Now, that doesn't mean that we've got to indoctrinate them, but we've just got to show them that there is an opposing view here, and this is not a one-sided, black and white, matter-of-fact thing. That sun might not be the 93 million miles away that we're told. But the minute that the issue is brought to the attention of the pupils, and that's why I've highlighted it, because it puts the onus onto us, we have to bring it to their attention whilst they're in school, then that triggers the remainder of the law, which says that the children have then got to be offered a balanced presentation of opposing views. So to get that, you've got to trigger it, right? But once they have that legal right to have the balanced presentation of opposing views, we all know in flat earth that the teachers are not qualified to be able to tell them how to fairly and balance an opposing view, because they're not taught it. They haven't thought about stuff. So it's like teachers aren't even capable of doing it. So it's like, that's where we come into it. So as you can see, there's a little footnote number 9. And when I click number 9, it'll take us down to the law. Oh, no, I've done that. So anyway, so once the alternative views have been brought to the attention of the students, we can then ask the head of the school to accommodate our balanced presentation of opposing views as outlined in the law. The head and the board of governors and the local authority must take such steps as are reasonably practicable to allow us to present balanced presentation of the opposing views. They've got to do it. That's really key. Now, I didn't know this law existed, but I'll let you guys know that I spoke with Conspiracy Cats, and I don't agree with Conspiracy Cats. He's a physics teacher at secondary school. I don't know the name of the school, but it's up northwest somewhere. And basically, I had the conversation with him on the back of the headmaster, allowing him to act as a teacher in the debate. Now, in the debate I had with him, he acted like a bloke. He didn't act like a physics teacher, because I asked him specifically for the physics of the heliocentric model that he believes is true. But his answers that were supposed to be based on the evidence were like from a bloke in the pub kind of thing. It was conspiracy cats talking personally rather than conspiracy cats talking as a teacher, which really surprised me because I thought a teacher would have come to the table with real evidence. But nonetheless, he came as a teacher with the permission of the head. And I didn't realize this at the time, but the importance of that, meaning that it was done with the permission of the headmaster, means that that school, whatever school it was probably given the ability for that balanced presentation of opposing views, because it went on the school website, my debate with him, and he was cordial. He was a decent guy, wrong, but decent. But that shows that that particular school was allowing the balanced presentation of opposing views. We had the back and forth. The kids saw it. So all the kids in his school that he was teaching at the time are aware that some bloke, me, was quizzing Sir on physics. Now, that is the balanced presentation of opposing views. It was done over the internet, and that's only one school. But that one school that Conspiracy Cats is in basically complied with the law, and Conspiracy Cats was part of the compliance. Now, that's only one example, right? So if you apply that to your local kids' high school where your kid goes to, would your headmaster allow one of your physics teachers to have a debate with some bloke on the internet and post it on the school website? Maybe, maybe not. If he does do it, then he's probably complying with the rule. If he doesn't do it, then he's not, because the minute that it's brought to the attention of students, which it was with Conspiracy Cats, he came to me because of one of his students, the headmaster's got to allow that balanced presentation of opposing views. So that gives us the ability, by knowing that Conspiracy Cat's headmaster did this, means that he was complying with the rule. He was aware of the rule. And Conspiracy Cats knows this rule as well. He's familiar with it. They have parts of the day that are dedicated to alternative studies. I can't remember what it was called. You mentioned it before, Roxanne. It's got 4 letters. Do you remember what it was?
Off the top of my head, brain freeze.
HEXC or something like that. I can't remember what it's called, but there is an element of this alternative thinking, but Flat Earth doesn't make it into it. So the chances are the headmaster won't even have any clue that Flat Earth really potentially a controversial topic. But point is, we've got this law and we can now rally the schools and let them know that there is an alternative and we would like to present it. So it's like, and they've got this legal duty to allow the balanced presentation of opposing views once it's been brought to the attention of the kids. So that's where the thingy comes into it, the activism. Now, if you think back to the tour in the bus, then these guys spent a long time both driving in the rain and sleeping at night time in the rain and whatnot. And I mean, look at how many kids are in the average school, right? A couple of 100 kids. They probably got a couple of 100 people, maybe 300 people over the whole of the tour. But you could probably do that in just one school for an hour and get the same amount of people with the word going out to. So from an efficiency point of view, everybody's under one roof. It's warm, lights are on, everyone, there's brews on the go. Teachers will be making you brews and stuff. But from an efficiency point of view, it's way more efficient to do this if you can get into any of the schools. Now, whatever you do with regards to the content that you present is creative. It's the part where we can fill an hour with whatever we think that is going to be making a good point to plant the seed. At least that there's an alternative view. Do we flat smack them? Probably not. Maybe. But at least get in there and say, guys, heliocentricity might not be the way forward. Look at it. And if we only plant the seed by even if you just get a lot of business cards and frisbee them out into the crowd, research Flat Earth, then that'll just plant the seed for them. But if you were to do that, say 3 schools in a day for an hour each, I mean, that's a lot of kids. And that way we are getting into the schools and we're at least saying there's an alternative view, and they'll remember it. And depending on what we do with that hour, they'll probably remember it for the rest of their lives, or they may forget it as quick as it came in if we're not very good at presenting it. But at least we've got the way to get to these kids in law, and the headmaster has to allow it. Once we get the message out that there is an opposing view, he has to allow it. And I don't think an hour is too much to ask. So then it's like a case of, well, what do? We need to look good. We need to sound good. We need to have a polished act, and we need to do something theatrical maybe, or educational maybe, or whatever. But you've got to be like good looking. You've got to, and I say good looking, I mean, you've got to be dressed well. You've got to look clean and tidy, well spoken, no thick accents. So Scouse, Brummy, thick Cockney accents are not going to go down well. But thick Scouse accents are not going to go down well either. So it's not, the thick accents are no good. You want someone that's well spoken, that looks good, that dresses well, that's not unkempt. And these are all the things that create a good impression. And what really I'm doing really is telling people that there's a law there that we can use. And I think that if we were able to put together some kind of presentation or performance on stage, even if it's not flat smacking, even if it's kind of on a theme, like a law case maybe or whatever, if we can plant the seed with kids that it might not be the case that Mr. Johnson teaching physics and the heliocentric model might not be actually right, I think that's way more advantageous to flat earth than sticking on YouTube and having conversations within a closed environment that is the little tiny corner of the world known as flat earth. Or more efficient maybe than the tour, as good as the tour was and as successful as the tour was, ultimately, was it efficient use of time? And it was weeks and weeks and weeks, and you have to wonder, how did you get through it? So really, I think the point for tonight is there is the law there. We can trigger it by doing certain things. And it's a case of asking people, what do we think we could do now that we know that we can get into the schools in law? Because they can't stop us. They've got to allow a reasonable and a balanced alternative view. So really, it's a case of like, what ideas can people come up with for what can we do? Because, okay, at the moment, I haven't finished the research on it and there may be more to come. But what I will say is that until yesterday morning, I didn't know that there was this legal avenue to get into schools. I didn't know that all we had to do was bring the information to the children and then ask to speak to the children, and the headmasters got to allow it. Maybe not give us a 6-hour day, but you can't give us 10 minutes at the end of a class, end of a day or whatever. It has to be a balanced representation of the opposing view. Whatever that means is entirely up to us to try and negotiate with the school. But a balance, I'm sure an hour, they can afford an hour in like all the time that they get to teach all the kids stuff. It's only going to be like an assembly, isn't it? At the end of a day, maybe, or at first thing in a day or whatever. So it's like we've really got a creative canvas there that we can do things with. And I think that if we put our heads together, we can create something that's really going to basically plant the seed for the kids and give them something to think about. And it's really efficient use of time. Because if we can bring all these kids to flat earth, even if they just come into the chat rooms, even if they just come in and said, yeah, I met these people on the school run today, they came to my school or whatever. Aside from the fact that it'll piss all the trolls off, the baller trolls, because they'll hate the fact that all these new people are coming in, they're going to have to up their game, because they can't just start attacking people like with the name calling and stuff, because there's going to be loads more people coming to flat earth. And I think this is really interesting. And it's a case of like asking people, what do they think? So, Rox, is there any way we can? Is there any way we can add people in, or is there any questions that you spotted by people in chat? What's the feeling at the minute?
Yeah, so far so good. I mean, even people are saying, have we made people in America aware? Obviously, Marin, I know of Marilyn's spirit level. I was just saying to Flat Plane Oregon that we were just literally talking about this morning, which is why hence we're live now talking about it, because we're trying to spread awareness to as many people as possible. Roxanne, can you document a template to be put together for head teachers and the board putting or offering flat earth? Anthony, do you want to respond to that? Chris UK is wondering about has a format been put together for emailing the schools? We've got a rough.
We haven't worked out how best to approach the schools yet, because I'm still presenting to everyone, by the way. You might need to cancel that. The little drop-down box.
Yeah.
There's a couple of ways that you can approach them. It says that in the law that we've got to bring to the children's attention the political issue that wants to be discussed, and then that triggers the head's duty to allow it to happen in a controlled way. So obviously, what that means is you can't turn up outside the school like a mob mentality and demand that you go in. But in the law, essentially, that would be the mechanism that they have to apply to, and obviously that's a little bit harsh, and it wouldn't be fair to expect the headmaster to agree to let us go in the school if we did it that way, even though that's what the law says to do. I think the better way to do it would be to just write an email or a letter to a head of a school and just say, look, we're aware of this duty under the Education Act. We're aware of the legal duty on the headmaster to allow the balanced representation of the opposing view. And we're aware that you have to allow for it if we present the information to the children whilst they're in school. Rather than doing that, can we just have your permission to come into the school and give them a talk? That way, you're aware of what's going on before it happens. There's no nasty surprises, and he'll probably appreciate it if you cite the law back to him. And that's what we were talking about today. What should we do? How should we do it? And then if we do get given that hour, what do we populate that hour with? But the question, to answer the question, we haven't formulated it yet because we've only come across it in the last 24 hours. But in terms of the activism, I think this is really gold because it'll get to a lot more people in a smaller amount of time with much less effort and way less money. And it's repeatable. It would give somebody a full-time job kind of thing. If you were to do it up and down the country. I mean, obviously funding would obviously be an issue if it was long term, but at least if we just concentrated on London, for example, we could do a lot of schools in a short period of time, and we would get the word out to thousands of kids in really short period of time, and they will all go home, and we wouldn't need the press to do any advertising for us. Kids would do it through social media themselves. So we could black out the press completely. We wouldn't need the press. And I think that whatever letter we do, however we do it, I think that we can only really come to something really constructive, because it's in the law. It's there for us to do, but nobody knew about it before now, because I mean, I know damn well that nobody would know about this law until tonight, because there's nobody really legally trained in flat earth, and if there are legally trained, they're in different countries. But what I've realized is that we can utilize this law, and we can do activism within the schools completely lawfully, and present opposing views. So it's like, this is massive. Potentially this is massive. So I think whatever activism may result from this, I think we need to do a pilot, pick on a school, see what happens, and then I think we should send the email over and just see what the result is, because he's not able to legally say no. If he does say no, then we have to present the kids whilst they're on school with the material, and then it does trigger the law. But I'm sure if he knows that that's the alternative, he's not going to say no, because he knows if he knows that we know the rules, then he knows that we're going to do that instead. It's the alternative, right? So it's just a case of we need to populate an email and send it. But if he gives us the hour and says you can come in next week and present on Thursday at 2 o'clock, we haven't got anything to present, and we haven't got any equipment. We haven't got any people. We need to kind of put something together. We need to get some content, and an hour can go really fast if you're having fun, and there's enough to talk about if we're flat smacking. But maybe flat smacking is not the way forward. Maybe it's a theme that we should apply, where we maybe have an argument or a discussion or whatever. But the point is, what I really want people to think about is, if we were to get an hour in front of your high school, what would you say to people? How would we do? What should we do? So it's really, give us some ideas. How should we best approach this? And just let us know, because we've got this rule in the law that we can utilize, and we should use it. And I think that we should be looking at doing this sooner rather than later. So basically, tell them what you think.
I think as much input as everyone can give us on this, if you want to put your 2 cents worth in, pop it in the chat room just now. I agree with you, Anthony. I think strike while the iron's hot, and what we're waiting about for.
So GoPro Flat Earth UK Darb says, breaking the boundaries of race and gender and authority. I agree. Flat Earth transcends all of the race.
Anthony, I'm just going to go and let the dog out real quick here. Give me 2 seconds. Yeah.
Right. Flat Earth transcends all the religions, all the race, all the sexism arguments. It will unite people. It won't divide people, because it does go above and beyond, it goes above and beyond the usual discriminatory stuff that goes on in most walks of life. Jin, in waking up the British public to the flat earth geocentric model, both in our schools and in public, every avenue must be explored. Legal representation and activism go hand in hand. Yeah. Waking up the British public to flat earth geocentric model, both in our schools and in public, every avenue must be explored. Yeah, I do agree. I think I may need to speak to Anthony about the logistics of this. I may be able to help. Rose tinted monocle. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for ideas. We're looking for people that has got the equipment, because we're going to need microphones, speakers, amplifiers, because you can't fill a hall I've learned from when I did the opening night of the Flat Earth conference in Jury's Inn in Birmingham, that only had 100 people in it, and it was a long, thin corridor, and I can project my voice to the back, but I had to really struggle. It's not easy to fill a hallway when kids are rustling packets of crisps and whatever. So we're going to need amplification for voices. Ranty Flat Earth says that I was a bad driver, which I totally reject. What are there any more questions? Let's see. We can slow the rise of atheism. Well, we can plant the seed. We can plant the seed. I mean, at the end of the day, I didn't know that Flat Earth even existed on YouTube until I accidentally come across it. But the kids don't even realize it either. And we're all converting to ourselves, and we're preaching to the converted. I think we need to be preaching to the people that don't even realize that we're here. Do you know what I mean? It's like having a Ferrari and sticking it in a garage so that nobody ever sees it. Well, there's a way for us to do that now where everybody can see it. Let's just debate the shape of the earth for the next 20 years. Yep, exactly. Let's not do that.
Okay, I'm just looking.
So
yeah, massive shout out to everyone that's in there. Thank you so much for tuning in so far. But we want everyone's constructive input right now. So if you've got 2 cents worth to put into this, I don't know about anybody else, but I think this is an ultimate game changer. As far as I'm concerned, Anthony's given us a door into mainstream education, state-funded education. And I, for one, I know this country is inundated with state-run schools. So as far as I'm concerned, this is potentially an audience of hundreds of thousands of the next generation. Isn't that who we're trying to guide? The next generation.
Yeah.
I think we're the first generation to come along to try and wake up 2 generations. We're trying to wake up our parents and our kids.
Luke says, start the presentation talking about the globe as truth and then come in with questions. This is the kind of thing that we need, because it's like, what would you do if you had an hour in a high school in front of, say, 200, 300, 400 kids? What would you do if you had that hour? I mean, an hour is a long time if you've got nothing, right? But there's that much that you could talk about that you could fill an hour up in. It would feel like 10 minutes. Yeah. So it's a case of, what do we do? What do we fill it with? And we need ideas. What do we do? Do we flat smack? Do we do some kind of theatrical performance where we just plant a seed without any flat smacking? I mean, there's a lot that we can do. It's just a case of, what do we do in an hour? And that's what we really need. So just basically get in touch with Roxanne. If you've got any ideas, or you've got contacts for people that have got PA systems or speakers or whatever, because we're going to need stuff like that. But we need to do a pilot study, preferably somewhere in London. So basically it's a case of, let's see if we can make this happen and see what happens. Use science against science, use law against law, bring back our faith in who we are. Yeah, I agree. I always agree. Try and use their own evidence against them. Try and use their own science against them. Try and use their own laws against them. And that law's there, black and white. Regardless of whether or not we can get heliocentricity banned in the national curriculum, that's obviously a long-term goal. But in the short term, we can get into the schools legally just by doing what it said in that rule. And I think that'll just, I think it'll just open up the realms of possibilities to a lot of things. And I think it's brilliant.
Just like you were saying, opening up more possibilities. Jason said, with the side effect of parents asking about flat earth and possibly objecting that their kids are being taught flat earth, which will create noise for the press. Incidentally, the racket that'll be made over it.
It will create noise for the press, but to be honest, I don't think we'd even need the press to do anything, because you know what the press are like. They'll only just put a bad slant on it, they'll mock it, they'll ridicule it, and it doesn't matter. All we have to do is literally plant the seed to the kids so that they're aware that there is an alternative explanation for what we're looking at, and let them make their own minds up, because we've all had to make our own minds up. Rob says, thanks, Anthony Riley, for taking the initiative into making waves legally. Well, it wouldn't have happened. This would not have happened if my GoFundMe, wasn't successful, because it was the GoFundMe for me that allowed me to get onto the course, that gave me access to the legal databases that I need to be able to research the law that relates to heliocentric teaching in the national curriculum. It revolved straight from that. But in addition, not only that, this wouldn't also have happened without the GoFundMe for the tour that was done by the lads in the caravan, the mobile home thing, because them two things have basically been brought together by some kind of divine intervention almost. And both of them came from GoFundMe's. And it's like, wow, this moves forward.
Yeah.
How far does it move? We make that now. We've got the ability to be creative, and we control it. It's not something that the ballers can control. It's not something that the head teachers can control. They can't even stop it. They've got to comply with what the rule says. So as long as we comply with what the rule says, he's got to comply with what the rule says. And I think that's really the key point. So we can do this with negotiation. As long as we know that the law's there, and now we do know that the law's there, we can utilize it and we can maximize it and plant the seed. And even if we just get to tell the kids that there's a seed that needs to be planted and we plant that seed, that's really our work done. We don't have to convert anybody. We don't have to demand anybody. We don't have to preach or indoctrinate. We've just got to say that there's other alternative explanations for what we're being taught. You should be, if you're interested in the space and solar system and all that, you should definitely go and check it out. And if we can leave a school and we've got half the kids asking questions that would never have been asking the questions had we not have been there, that's the activism done. And remember, it came from the result of two GoFundMes that merged together to create a better force, if you will. So I don't know. A lot of people criticize GoFundMes, and some people say that you shouldn't have GoFundMes in flat Earth. And I would say it depends. There are benefits to GoFundMes because these two GoFundMes were brought together, and we've got somewhere where we didn't know that we would ever get to be without them. So there is benefits to the GoFundMes. It just depends on whether or not you want to donate to stuff and whether or not you think it's worth it. And in this case, it definitely was.
The brain says use current technology to make it interactive for them. That's one thing that we did mention. You know, like the kind of interface type of TED Talks, technological gizmos that that they use to enhance their presentation. So I think whatever we can do to captivate the audience, be it that they're young, don't, like someone else said, don't take it too seriously, but don't be silly either. Find some kind of happy medium.
Well, imagine this.
Gave me some input as well.
Imagine this. Imagine we set up a channel specifically for the activism or the consequence of the activism, so that we know that anybody that adds to it has come from the activism tour, right? And imagine that we'll call it ABC, whatever the channel's called,
right?
And then imagine telling everybody in the class, in the hallway, right, guys, that is the channel name up on the board. Go and open up your YouTube on your phones right now.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? So for our American counterparts and also our European counterparts, obviously we're dealing with different countries' educational systems, but there has been a couple of people that are American that are in the chat room that are already wondering, are they going to find the same back door into this subject as we found over here? What would be your advice to the American people that are watching right now, to if they wanted to go and beaver off now and go and see if they can pick through things that have happened? What are things to look out for in the educational system, no matter what country you're in? Things that have happened, because obviously you crossed this by looking at a case, didn't you?
Well, what I can tell you is that I'm a member of FE Corps, and in FE Corps there are Americans that are legally positioned in life, is the best phrase. And what I would say is that the people that are in FE Corps that are American are looking at it. There is an alternative. I don't know what it works like in the American system, and I'm not going to profess to know. But all I will say is that it is being dealt with. It is being looked at from an American's perspective within FE Corps itself, because they've realized that there's a law there in England. How hard is it now that they know where to look in the American rules? They would look in a similar kind of place. It's being dealt with is the answer. And it'll come out. It might not come out in the next week. It might not be in the next month, but it is being looked at. And if there is the same equivalent thing in the Constitution or whatever, I'm sure they will find it. And if they do find it, and they may well find it, may not, but they may well, then that's going to be another avenue that we can use, and that will happen. So leave it with us. We're going to we'll sort that out.
Another question, if I could ask you, is that okay?
Yeah, go on.
Can you hear me?
Mechanic in
viewers in the chat Yeah, no worries. Got some viewers in the chat room. One of them is Jin CBI. He's over in Asia. He's over in Japan. Does anyone have any advice for our Japanese counterparts that are maybe trying to look to infiltrate the education system over there?
I wouldn't know anything about Japan.
Maybe not specifics, no, but maybe not specifics, but where for them to start looking, you know, in any country's educational system.
You would need a lawyer. You need somebody in law to be able to look it up, because I went into it thinking originally that teachers need to teach the truth. And although I still think that, there's no law that states that they must. And indeed, in what I've shown you tonight from the indoctrination point of view, the teachers are actually taken out of the law if they present partisan political media. Because they're just presenting it, provided they don't promote it, which they may or may not do. But I don't know about Japan. You would need somebody in Japan that's got a legal ability to find the information out.
Okay. But as and when we do find out things over here, if it's helpful to share internationally, we will share that information as and when we come across it. If anything comes to light that may aid and abet other people internationally, because I know it must be frustrating to be stuck in a country where there isn't a massive movement of people, and I'm not hearing an inundation from people in Asia that are awake right about now.
No.
So massive love and respect to everybody that's tuned in from Asia right about now, because I'm not seeing much activism going on there, so it must be isolated.
Luke Kennedy, do you want to re-ask your question? I'm not seeing your question states how to FE core. I don't know what that. I don't re-ask your question, sir.
How to FE core. How to.
I don't know what his question means. He's not asked it really good enough. Yeah. UK Darb says if they can push alternative genders in school, flat Earth should be easy. Yeah, I agree. If
should be.
Yeah. I mean, we can get in there now. Now we know that we can get in there, because previously, before tonight, people didn't know that they could get in, and now we do know that we can. Now it's a case of what do? We need to target an approach, and we need to have like precision, military precision, with whatever we do next. And really, that's it. The American laws are somewhat similar to British laws. This would include Japan. Possibly. I don't know about Japan. America, I agree. They've generally got a similar approach to what English laws have. So they are, Mike. How do you join FE Core? Luke Kennedy, you join FE Core. If you go, just look up the FE Core website. That's how you find out more information about joining FE Core. But a lot of the FE Core members they're already in, or they're on YouTube. FE Core is up and coming, and it's the way that all the decent people in Flat Earth that are trying to do good things commune. It's how we keep together. There's no infighting, there's no trolls, there's no nothing. You join FE Core just by typing fecore.org, I think the website's called, and then go from there. And you'd be surprised how many people are in FE Core that you wouldn't know. Is there a link to the debate that I had with Conspiracy Cats? Yes, I will dig that out now.
Oh, good. Good job.
So bear with me.
So other people are saying English in America is almost the same lately.
Yeah.
This is 100% the way to go. Teach our kids the truth. We need to guide a new generation. We need to guide the next generation in the right way. Somehow we need to find a way to guide them in the right direction. Baby steps. Baby steps.
There are two hangouts that concern myself and Conspiracy Cats. It was a double-sided thing. In return for me taking and sitting a higher physics paper at GCSE level, that was the deal my end. I had to take and pass the GCSE paper higher, and in return he would then debate me. So I'll post the first one I'm going to post in chat now is my side of the deal, where I had to take and pass a higher physics GCSE paper, which I obviously did. And then in the return part of it, which was his bit, then I will find that for you. Bear with me. I've just lost the page that I was on. I will find it here. So the one that's in chat right now is the one that you'll see where me and Conspiracy Cats had the paper. And then I'm just getting back to my videos now. Bear with me. The second link. And to be honest, you'll see that the whole point of the second link that I find in a sec, the whole point of it was that he answers these questions as a teacher. But you'll see by when he has the conversation with me, he answered it as a bloke, not as a teacher, because his answers weren't teachery. They were blokey, which, you know, is fine, but it's not really what we were supposed to be doing.
I like that. My son and daughter will teach Effie one day.
Yeah.
I like that. I'll drink to that. Cheers.
Here we go. So if I open this one, copy that. This is a 2-hour hangout. So it does involve a little bit of endurance. But I'll go back into the chat now, and this is the one with the debate with the teacher. So check that out. It is 2 hours, but I asked him 5 questions that I gave him in advance so that he could go away and look at the answers for. And he had them in advance. He knew the questions. He told me what answers he would give, and then I told him what I would respond back with. So it was scripted. Right. But when it came to doing it, he didn't really do what he... It's not that he didn't do what he said he was going to do. He just didn't answer the questions the way I expected him to based on the previous script. He answered the questions like a bloke, you know, like a normal bloke. And it was not quite the same as being a teacher, which I didn't really expect. But nonetheless, that was... Remember, the background to that was the headmaster had said it was okay. And that was actually showing her compliance with the law, which I wasn't privy to at the time. I didn't realize the significance at the time. But now looking back, whether or not you agree with the points that he makes or whatever, that was compliance with the rules, which you've got to tip the cap to him, even if you would disagree with him. The fact that it was gone through the headmaster and was being presented as a teacher with the permission of the school head is compliance with the system. So credit for that needs to be given and reflected if you do put comments in, because the guy may well be wrong, but at least the headmaster was allowing it. And that's really good. Because I didn't realize the significance back then. Oh, good. So I guess we're kind of done.
Love it. Love it. I'm truly inspired by all of this. I feel like this has given me the wind in my sails that I really needed. My daughter feels incredibly enthusiastic about it as well. I was talking to her about it. She feels like it's a good way to go as well. And she's in school herself just now. So I'm feeling really enthusiastic. I'm hoping everyone watching is as well. And if you have any constructive comments that you want to put in and you haven't put them in the chat room, by all means, put them in the comment section, or you can email me at operationrealness@yahoo.com if you want to put your input in there as well. And as we go with this, we'll keep you updated. I put Anthony's channel in the description as well. So if you haven't already subscribed to him, click his channel and subscribe to him. You're regularly on Nathan's Hangout as well, right?
Correct. Most days I'm with Nathan on the debate, the flat earth debate. It doesn't always go into... There's not, to be honest with you, the ballers have been battered that bad recently that they don't come in anymore, which is brilliant, because we just get like a little echo chamber. Even though there's a public link for anybody to join, they don't come in anymore. And they say that it's because Nathan's naughty, but it's not. It's because they keep getting their asses kicked, because they keep preaching this indoctrination that should be banned by law in schools. They keep preaching it as though it's truth, and it's ridiculous. So if you haven't checked out Nathan's channel, go to Nathan Oakley 1980, check out the Flat Earth debate, and make sure you check that from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Not British summertime. What's the other one? Greenwich Mean Time. So
GMT. I'll put the link in the description for that as well.
And in the meantime, just let us know your ideas. What should we do if we did get a test case for an hour? Should we try and flat smack? Should we present something different? Because we can get it in now, and this is all cool. Top work, Anthony. It's not just you. It's given a lift to at Roxanne, the Globalist Night. Yeah, so Adam's saying that he's been motivated by it as well. And we all should be. we can do this. Well done, guys, for finding a legal door into an unpartisan education into our schools. I agree. I agree. So we're definitely that's definitely gonna be something that we pursue in the next coming weeks. And obviously, if we do it, I reckon it'll be here on this channel where it'll be exposed and done or dealt with or addressed in whatever way. And I guess feedback's what we need. We need people to tell us what they think.
Yeah, feedback is the key words that we're saying to you guys right now. Feedback, constructive criticism, input, ideas, all of that. Because, you know, this country's quite big when it comes to secondary schools. We've got thousands of secondary schools to go to. So as much input is possible, really. I can't stress it any more than that. The comment section, my email address is on my about page as well of this channel. Anthony's channel's in here. I'm going to put Nathan Oakley's one in there. You're in there most of the time anyway. So if anyone has any input, you can catch Anthony tomorrow.
And if anybody works for a hire company that's got like electrical equipment that we can hire, that's always a good thing, because the first time we do it, we're probably just going to hire it. But if it goes down well and we have a good performance and it gets positive feedback or whatever,
correct,
and it looks like it might work big to
pilot it, right?
Yeah, we're going to try and run a pilot. We'll find a school, target it, see if we can get in there for an hour, make a presentation, obviously record it so that you guys can see what actually happened at the time, and then basically see what happens, because we think that we can do this, and we think that if we can like infiltrate schools, we should do, because it's much more efficient with time than it is to drive around the country and flat smack in town centres and whatnot, because you never know quite what you're going to get, do you, really? And it's really inefficient.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And the more input we get, the less error we're going to be doing when we do trial and error, because obviously we've not done this before. No one's done this before. So this is, you know, off charter territory. So any input that you can put in will obviously aid and abet us not maybe doing so much error. Yep, we're going to need to do a trial. It's inevitable. It's going to have to get trialed out no matter how we do this, whether we do it behind closed doors or we do it raw in public in front of you lot. Obviously, it doesn't take Einstein to work out if we're doing it in front of you guys. It's going to be brutally honest. You're going to see when we fall, and you're going to see when we get caught up on something and we move forward. But maybe that is the best way to go. You know? Yeah.
And I reckon
with everyone's input, we won't fail.
I reckon what we should do now is round out, because Patricia's just gone live with Martin Kenny, and I think we should all head on in chat, and we should all say that we've just come from Rock, just to get the word out. Yeah,
that'd be great. That'd be great. Listen, a good couple of people that I roll with, Everybody Equals Mind Controlled Squared, Ruben, that was at the event as well, Anthony. He's really good friends with Martin Kenny, and goes to stay with him often as well. So if everyone could go over to, is it Flat Earth and Other Hot Potatoes? Have I said that right?
Yeah, Flat Earth and Other Hot Potatoes. And just make sure you say in chat that Roxanne's just sent us, so that Patricia gets to know that we've all come over from Roxanne's.
Yes, please.
She'd love that.
Yeah, she really would. So we're going to wrap it up, and thank you so much for tuning in and being here with us and listening to us talking about partisan politics in education. ? So with that being said, you'll catch me again soon. Anthony will be on Nathan's show tomorrow, and go over to Patricia's now, Flat Earth and Other Hot Potatoes, and send her love, please.
Later, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.